As Dr. Satya mentioned, my name is Professor Yoganathan. I'm the Associate Chair for Translational Research and one of the founding members of the Coulter Department of Biomedical Engineering, which is a joint department between Georgia Tech and Emory. It is the first public-private partnership of a department. There have been others who have attempted to copy us. So let me give you a little bit of history about the department, because Satya is going to talk to you about this program, which is a unique program. So Georgia Tech in 1997, together with Emory, decided to establish a department of biomedical engineering. The reason being that Georgia Tech is one of the top 3 engineering schools in the country. It does not have a medical school. Emory is one of the top 20 medical schools. It does not have an engineering program. Georgia Tech and Emory have had a long courtship since 1985 in the biomedical technology area through seed grants, joint research activities, and having set the foundation through that, the decision was made that it would be good to set up a department. And the department was created in 1997 in a period of over 6 months, which was approved both by the Board of Regents of the state of Georgia, we being a state university, and the Board of Trustees of Emory. The department has offices both on the Georgia Tech campus as well as on the Emory Medical School campus. We have about 8 of our faculty who have positions and labs over there in a new building. And we have significant interactions, obviously, with the medical school in all fronts: research, design, devices, whatever you want. We're only 6 miles apart. There are some advantages to that compared to other places. Being independent entities, in most other universities where the medical school is normally the 60,000-pound gorilla that dictates everything. At Georgia Tech, it's the College of Engineering, which is about 65 to 70% of this faculty and students. So it's a good and productive relationship between the two, and it does leverage the strengths of both universities. Like I said, I was the second faculty member in the department. I've been at Georgia Tech coming on 35 years, and my area of research is cardiovascular, but I think you may have seen it in the article if you had time to read it, but is the relationship that I have with the medical device industry in the cardiovascular area. And I think this program sort of reflects some of that philosophy, because I was involved in creating this program. Georgia Tech takes any program it creates very seriously. All of our engineering programs, both at the undergraduate and graduate level, are ranked in the top 10. This department's ranked number 2. We've been knocking on Hopkins' door, and I think very soon we'll take over. But we take pride in everything we do. So it took us a while before we launched this program in BioID. We gave it some long and deep and thoughtful process, and we launched it last year. We started small with a class of 10. We are hoping to have a class of 20. So the reason we created this program was there is a clear need beyond what you get at an undergraduate degree. Unfortunately, biomedical engineering is such a vast area. It encompasses all branches of engineering, biology, physiology. It's probably unfair to say that you can learn everything you need to know in 4 years. It's probably better off if biomedical engineering was a 5-year degree program. But in the American system, that's hard to do. Most universities would balk at that. So a need for this type of professional degree is clear. I consult and work with companies large as Johnson & Johnson, Medtronic, St. Jude, and I get to see what characteristics they find in their engineers and what they have to train them in. And what they end up doing is essentially the first 2 years, if someone is coming directly out of college, they put them through what they call their design boot camp. So programs such as this, for people to get a degree from such, would be able to skip that and go above an entry-level position if with the correct metrics. So there is a need for this program. There is clearly industry sees the value in it because they don't have to then spend all their resources training people in doing this. Because the medical device industry is unique. It is a highly regulated industry. It is like the aircraft industry where there's a lot of regulation. But however, on the medical device side, because of the fact whatever you do is at some point going to end up in a human being, there is the Food and Drug Administration. You have to go through bench studies, animal studies, and clinical trials. And that's something that I don't think in most curricula you're going to get. You may hear about it in your design class at the very end. But this course or this program is intended to give you at least a good flavor of the kinds of things that you're going to need going forward. There are other programs out there. Johns Hopkins has one. Stanford has biodesign. They're all different. The one that we have crafted here is right now a one-year program with having people both from Georgia Tech, both from Biomedical Engineering, College of Management, outside consultants, people like that Satya brings in to give you a good overview of things that you need going into the medical device industry. The medical device industry is still one of the most profitable industries in the US. When you hear about balance of trade, this is one industry that still has a positive balance of trade. And it's going to continue. I know I heard some of you talk about cell and tissue engineering and regenerative medicine. Yes, those are there, but we still today have to deal with man-made devices. There are a lot of challenges in the area of biologics and how that will eventually play, but those things are still 10, 20 years down the road. Also keeping in mind that even if you come up, and let's take the example of stem cell therapy, okay, it's a biologic, but you still have to figure out ways of delivering it, how do you get it to the correct place, all of that requires device design capabilities. And the medical device industry, the job opportunities are pretty vast. Don't just think about going and designing something and there's things called quality engineering, regulatory affairs, manufacturing. There's a whole host of things that are open to people who have a good background in the field. Georgia is not a hotbed of biomedical industry, I'll grant you that, unlike Southern California or Boston. However, the department has strong ties to industry. People like me, there are other faculty who have interactions in the cardiovascular area. We have people in the orthopedic area. And as part of one of my job functions is to make sure, or at least to build industrial relations so that you guys will at least have an opportunity to interact with industry when you graduate. So that's part of the function. Obviously we have, this is not something that I'm proud to say, but the largest undergraduate program in the country, over 1,200 undergraduates in BME right now. However, we also have a very strong PhD program. So our graduate programs, and this is one of our other graduate programs, and hopefully if you come here, you'll get an opportunity while doing this to interface, at least in terms of interactions with PhD students who are working in different areas. So the big plus about Atlanta is that at Georgia Tech, you have the strength not only of biomedical engineering, every other engineering school is strong. I don't think that there are very few other schools, maybe people like Berkeley and maybe Stanford, that would claim the same, where if I have a problem that's electrical engineering related, I can pick up the phone and find an expert. Similarly, if I have a problem in structures, I can find someone in mechanical engineering or aerospace engineering. And that is an incredible resource because there are activities that are going on here that people are not necessarily applying to the medical device area, but if they're brought aware of the problem, they have the strengths to and resources to bring to bear. This building here is Technology Enterprise Park. It is owned by Georgia Tech, or the real estate arm of Georgia Tech, not the academic portion. We created our design studio on the second floor. This is one of the classrooms we use. And on the second floor, it's a cardiovascular research institute, faculty that work in the cardiovascular translational research area. On the fourth and fifth floor, we have a company. We have one of the present CardioMEMS, which is a company that has wireless sensors that actually came out of technology that came out of Georgia Tech lab. And the whole idea of this area is to be incubators for small startups in the medical area. Down the road, there is a large animal vivarium that is run by Emory, and there's plans of putting up another building here as this program, as the technology park area grows. So with that, I'll stop. Would like to see if any of you have any big picture questions for me or anything I can answer about Georgia Tech, this program, sort of an overview. Satya will sort of go through more of the details, but anything you have, any questions about Atlanta or anything like that? Yeah.
I know your students still have through the summer to finish, but do any of them have an idea of where they're going to be placed for jobs?
They've started looking. They've started interviewing.
Okay.
Yeah. That most companies, I mean, we have companies that come here in the fall, but they will not look at someone who's having. But Georgia Tech, because of its size, does have two sets of job orientation things, job fairs. Mm-hmm. One in the fall, one in the spring.
Okay.
But also, like we said, we do have companies that come visit. Edwards Life Sciences was out here last week. I'm going up with a team of guys. We're going to be visiting Medtronic, St. Jude, and Boston Scientific in the Twin Cities, 3 or 4 days. One of the things we're doing is talking about this program and all our programs. And one of the things is talking about the opportunities these companies have for recruiting.
The students have started looking out, talking to employers, networking, going online, looking for the jobs, and some of them have geographic preferences. So they're working through all that right now. The session has begun for them.
Okay.
Any other questions? Satya?
Okay.
It's all yours.
Good morning to you all.
You're going to introduce.
And pardon?
You're going to introduce David.
Yeah, we have two, other than the ones you saw yesterday at the dinner time, we have two folks here, Tiffany Karp from GCMI. You'll be visiting them today in your last item in your program. So Tiffany heads our Georgia Center for Medical Innovation, where they bring in a lot of contract development activities for the local industries. And Tiffany will give you an overview, I guess, when we are there. Mm-hmm. And David Stern is another strong supporter for our program. He's an executive vice president at CardioMEMS, located in the 5th floor of this building. And I'll let David talk at the end of the program overview when we have a session for all the faculty to introduce about their activities. But just in a nutshell, David has been a great resource for this program. He has thrown open everything in his facility to our students, internal document, the processes, the prototype evolution, and given lectures. So it's been a great support we had. And I'm so glad he's here because you all get to see. We have another industry partner, CR Bard. They're about 45 minutes away. I didn't want to trouble them, but David, I asked, and he readily agreed to come and sit here for a few minutes in this program.
So just, I don't know how much Satya told. How much do they know about you? Probably nothing.
I'm going to say a little bit, but
let me just say a few words about him, and he can tell me. But we're lucky to have someone like Satya. He's spent 30 plus years in the medical device industry, cardiovascular, ophthalmic, and he has true real world experiences. And when he talks with not only things that have been successful, but more importantly, where things have gone awry. That is where you learn your lessons from. And the medical device industry is full of skeletons all over the world. I mean, devices, nothing works perfectly. Nothing works for the first time. Obviously, you're dealing with human life, so you want to minimize that. And there are processes, but again, you've got to learn from your mistakes so you don't repeat them. And Satya, with his background, brings a tremendous, and we're very lucky to have someone like him with true world experience, and also because he has a lot of contacts and he has been using that to bring outside speakers. So, Satya.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I'll get started. What I'll do this morning, this is the agenda for the rest of the morning up to about 12 o'clock, is that I'll give an initial program overview where I'll give some details about the program and the general philosophy and the activities going on. And then I'll throw it open for a discussion with the faculty, and Rafael Landino, whom you met last night, he's one of our faculty. David Stern has been supporting us. Julia Babinski will be joining us in a bit. Jerry Ackerman, the literary clinical person who took yesterday, he may be able to join us if he's available. So we'll have a question and answer session. Then we'll have at 11 o'clock the panel discussion with my students will be coming in, and you met many of them, but they'll be again talking to you about life in Atlanta and GT. And then lunch at 12 o'clock, and then 1 o'clock we'll have the tour of the labs here before we head out to the animal facility. So let me get started here. I think I have something interesting, and I have put together a lot of slides. I hope you'll enjoy it. First of all, there's a skyline, okay, that surrounds you right here, the Technology Enterprise Park and the high-rise skyline of Atlanta. So you can know where you are. And here is Ajit has made it easy for me. I was going to introduce my life through a pictorial, but Ajit has already told you. But what I wanted to show here is my nomadic career. The times I graduated, there's no biomedical engineering department. I was a chemical engineer with a PhD in the 80s who strayed into this industry by accident. And since then, they couldn't get rid of me, and I just stuck there for 33 years, 30 plus years. And then academia finally brought me here. But this picture I show you, this nomad has an arrow pointing towards Wall Street. All my life, I did nothing but connecting science to business outcomes, product development. I stuck to that role throughout. And what happened is, I'm sorry. Okay. So the kind of, I just wanted to show you that everything was Wall Street driven in my life. And some of the products I worked, I showed pictorial in the lower left corner. You see, I worked in limb salvage implants, initial part of my life, peripheral vascular surgery, developing substitute blood vessels for artificial limbs, above and below the knee applications. And then the upper left corner, cardiac world, where we dealt with many kinds of devices, thoracic vascular grafts and stents and stent graft combinations and all those kinds of things. And then abdominal surgical implants as well. And then the right corner, upper right, is the ophthalmic industry, mainly cataract, intraocular lenses for cataract surgery, IOLs. If any of you know the Acrisoft model, I know one of you said you came from ophthalmic background. Acrisoft is something that I was very closely involved with, and that's one of the implants. And the lower right corner is some amount of controlled release drug applications for pediatric, attention deficit disorder and those kinds of therapeutic areas. So I just wanted to portray that I had a nomadic journey, because I learned everything by trial and error. Me and my peers of my times, we didn't have formal coaching, no structure, but it's all by real life experiences. Make more mistakes, quality mistakes, learn from there, go on. That's how it was. And now this role, since last fall, I'll show myself in the middle as a mentor. Me, only difference being these nomads of today's times, like you guys, will have to charge harder, be smarter, and run faster, only because the innovation climate has changed significantly. In my time, there's no thing like health economics, nothing like insurance industry issue is not an issue. There's no Affordable Medical Care Act. The healthcare cost was not a significant fraction of the GDP of many countries around the world. So we could afford to just concentrate on science, technology. And the biggest challenge for us was regulatory approval. That was a big rock those days for us. But now, on top of all that, you got to look at health economics, the whole world economy landscape. You got to know the CPT code, the reimbursement philosophy right when you start innovating. Otherwise, it's of no value. It's got to be very balanced, affordable. So I see it as a huge challenge. And these kind of courses, I think, will be coming in handy, as you will learn in a few minutes from this point onwards. But that's why I see that this role of mine is to mentor your careers, and along with my faculty. I'm not the only one doing it. Here is a nutshell, the domain areas of our program. The BioID program consists of regulatory, clinical literacy, project activities, electives in various subjects, classical development processes, product development for biomedical industries, and woven together with a team-based approach to problem solving to simulate the real world. So in 1 year's time, we're trying to give you and cram as much as possible, which in many of our cases took probably 15, 20 years. We're trying to give that exposure to you all. And the central theme of my program, the way I'm giving it shape, is based on real world and practice based. Those are the two pillars of my program, as you'll see in a few minutes. So our mission here, to state in a very classical way, is to provide you, the master students, with the knowledge of innovation, development, and commercialization of biomedical products to help advance medical care and contribute to local economy as well. Here are the faculty. You know me. Rafael Andino is here with me today. He is a local industry person, tremendous local contacts in the Atlanta area, especially, of course, rest of the country as well, but he's been of great value to us to introduce many of the Atlantans to our program and us to them. So it's been a very valuable liaison here. Jeremy Ackerman is our clinician from Emory who took you yesterday for the tour. He's also part of he taught a course in fall. Dr. Y, whom you just heard, is our program sponsor and our lead in terms of setting the vision. I'm the operational guy, but he's the one who really, from the leadership team of the whole GT system, provides us the direction and vision for the program. Arnold Schneider is our, whom you met last evening, is a College of Business School professor who taught a course in this program. And Dr. Julie Babensi, whom you met again yesterday, she's the associate director, helps with curriculum development, and is also a key member of this program. This is just a core faculty. We have several other faculty, which will, guest faculty and others. I'll give a glimpse of them in a few slides. And now to run down in a nutshell, this is a 3-semester program. The fall semester, we have 4 core courses. That is just to lay the foundation from a textbook and course angle. But then really from there on, the course becomes completely real world. It takes a different twist. So in the fall, the 4 courses, Biomedical Innovation Development, I teach that course. It's basically, I teach the life cycle medical development of medical devices, the processes, all the way from concept through commercialization, spanning design control, QSR, stage gate design, manufacturing validations, regulatory pathways, substantial equivalence versus new product, the whole ball of wax. So what does it take from an ideation stage to get to the final? And the way I do it is through, of course, classical textbook reference methodology, but also a lot of case studies, real world, from my own experience, but I also draw in a lot of outside industry contacts through video lectures, through guest lectures from people like CardioMems here, CR Bard locally. So we have had a wonderful mix of instructors in the program. So what I'm going to do is at the end of this set of slides, I'm going to give you a video clips, 2 to 3 minute segments of the real world renowned experts who have come and spoken in our program, which will give you a flavor of the kind of topics we have covered and how much of exposure has been there. The next course, Clinical Experience in Literacy, is taken by or offered by Dr. Jeremy Ackerman. He does a lot of clinical rotations, taking the students through the clinical procedures and from the clinician's angle, what are all the things to watch out for from developing biomedical device. Third one, medical markets and clinical specialties. Rafael Andino has taught that course. He's given the students a wonderful flavor and rollout of everything that from across various therapeutic markets like orthopedic, neuro, cardiovascular, ophthalmic, how to go, what are all the markets available for products in this area, how to do unmet clinical needs, the reimbursement issues, the whole landscape of even front-end business planning to get funding from a venture capitalist. And finally, financial planning is taken by Arnie Schneider, gives project accounting and costing to help out, gives a financial literacy for this program graduates. Now come to the spring semester. We start off right away in Master's Project 1. This is a real world, hands-on, nuts and bolts product development activity. The students get out to meet, network, talk with clinicians, identify unmet clinical needs, start hands-on prototyping, get on to animal studies or cadaver studies. We have the facility you'll be visiting later this afternoon, and everything short of a clinical study is included here. And this is the first semester they start on it, and they continue to the final second semester as well. But this is the starting time. They maintain design file, they create the entire package exactly along the real world. They create design inputs, risk management, everything goes on there. Next project strategy and planning. A lot about project planning, project management, tools like Microsoft Projects, Gantt charts, ProChain, all those kind of things are taught by a College of Business School professor who's, faculty who are experienced in this area. 2 of them are teaching that. Then there are 2 graduate electives which we offered in this program to enable the students to leverage the strength of Georgia Tech's engineering school course offerings, as well as in the science areas or in business. So they can take any 2 courses of their choice, which hopefully will give them a reinforcement in some core area. Like supposing you think of a career in design related in product development, you could go into that area and take design courses offered by the industrial engineering department, CAD courses, specialized courses, or you could take biomaterials courses or business electives. So my current students are taking those various mixes of courses depending on what their strengths are and what they would like to do. Pardon? Yeah, I'm going to come to that. Next one is summer semester. This is a final semester. So the team masters project now gets into the final stage of near, completion of a real world product development package. And the deliverables expected are a full-fledged FDA submission package, whether it be a 510K or an IDE CE file equivalent. And all the design histories, everything complete to that extent. And also an IP package, should something come out of it, and a full-blown rationale for the design, materials, and processes. What is the script for locking these 3? How do they come to those conclusions? Really, so that's going to be a complete project in itself for an unmet clinical need. The medical regulatory requirements course is going to be taught by the Vice President of Regulatory and Clinical at CR Bard, a local company. He's an optometrist, very well versed in regulatory and clinical affairs. He's going to teach, now he's going to go into a deep dive in this area. In my course, I taught them the overall flavor of regulatory and gave them exposure, some case studies, but he's going to go into nuts and bolts of it and detailed regulatory covering both United States as well as Europe, as well as Japan and several other registrations of importance around the world. How do you do regulatory things? What do they call for? Things like that. And clinical aspects also going to be clinical studies, writing a protocol, site selection, closing out a study, doing the report, everything. Final course is going to be on professional communications and development. This is going to be really the final touch-up dressing before you graduate, giving tips on how to write emails, how to do good business presentations, conflicts and collaborations, how to work in teams, how to be a leader of teams, all those kinds of things that will be woven into this course. So this is, in a nutshell, the 3-semester courses we are going to offer. I'm going to come down to a little bit more details about what is unique about this program. Really, why are we trying to, why are we convinced, first of all, and why are we talking about it to everyone? So the unique things in this program are high focus on real world industry practices, in-depth exposure to all medical device industry functions. This is very important because only when people know how these functions are interlinked can they make healthy, useful contributions to outcomes. This industry is heavily collaborative. If people do not want to work in teams, they do not want to be part of multidisciplinary activities and multifunctional activities, I think they better reconsider their career in this industry. This heavily team-oriented. No one can escape it. Even if you're a rock star or a fundamental physicist, you've got to be part of teams. So you've got to be linking all the way through that. Because at the end of the day, what you're doing here is a tangible product in the hands of a surgeon which is going inside the body of a patient. That's as close as the line outside gets here. It's not some distant thing that's not going to have an application. This is very nuts and bolts. So that's why it's very important that one of the things I'm stressing is the exposure to all functions. How does regulatory link with R&D, QA link with other functions? How do manufacturing? Everything is linked here. And incorporation, industry development, product development processes, like all the stage gate and design control current processes. So now value to the industry. This is what we go and tell the industry. Look, folks, you spend 2 to 3 years training entry-level graduates, and in my people like me, you spend even more, tremendous amount of money. We are training you for them here in 1 year. You're getting well-trained supply of candidates. They may not be experts or experienced, but they're well exposed and rounded. And they can easily latch on from this point to take leadership roles. So that's what we're giving them, well-trained candidates, shortened learning curve for hitting the ground. And one other thing which I keep stressing to my students to market themselves as well as to the industry is these students can wear potentially 2 hats in comparison to the rest of the entry-level students without this kind of background. One hat is a technical hat, which on par with everybody else. But the other hat is they can take on, when you required, leadership roles of cross-functional teams. They can become a team leader day one because they know how regulatory functions, they know their mindset, they know how manufacturing functions, they can pull it all together. It's like the conductor of an orchestra versus an individual instrumentalist. They can do both. That's the real plus point in this kind of a program. And some of the key features, I think I might have talked most of it, but essentially from the ideation stage all the way, the preclinical R&D, early concept evaluations, prototyping, preclinical development, and all the testing required for FDA submissions, toxicity, animal, in vitro, lab, simulation, all those, they learn the front-end aspects, then followed by regulatory and clinicals about preparing submissions for global approvals, 510Ks, IDE, PMA, CE file, country-specific, doing clinical studies. They are exposed to all that, and quality assurance and manufacturing, all the validations and design control, scale up, and global release. Now, we have, as I told you, several external faculty and presenters, and one of the highlights of this program is how hospitable Atlanta has been to me into this program. I came here thinking I may be having a tough time. This is not Orange County or Minnesota. What am I going to do here? But thanks to people like CardioMEMS, CR Bard, Raphael's contacts, we had a wonderfully supportive local, and of course Tiffany Karp. We had a wonderfully supportive local, what you can call industry and industry professionals who have contributed to this program. They come and given guest lectures. They come and graded assignments, given assignments to students. They shared their SOPs even, internal SOPs. So that's just fantastic. And I'm going to show you some of those because that's the highlight of the program. Here are the guest lectures we had. This is just a snapshot. Jason White, Vice President of CardioMEMS, who works under David Stern, and David Stern himself. Scott Roberts is the Vice President of Regulatory and Clinical at Bard. Tom Godfrey, Associate Director of Manufacturing at Bard. John Gode, Manufacturing at Bard. This is just a small example here. And now we had, in addition to these, remote lectures from renowned world-class experts, clinicians, entrepreneurs, regulatory gurus. And here is again a small list of those. Dr. Val Jivanandam, I'll talk more about him in a few seconds when I show the clip. He is a world-renowned cardiac surgeon from Chicago. He gave a video lecture to my students, and he got so excited he wanted to give one more after giving one. And he gave about 4 hours of talk to my students, covering all the full gamut of cardiac surgery evolution and development, right from the early days to the current state of the art. Then Samay Okte is an ex-FDA reviewer, and is currently president of a regulatory consulting company. He gave guest lectures. Rob Michaels is a serial entrepreneur from California who started and sold several companies all the way through sale to big corporations. He gave a wonderful talk, and Dr. Ray Chesser, Six Sigma expert. So this is just an example of some of them, but you'll get to hear them too, clips of them in a few minutes. Local industry visits. One other thing we did was take the students to local companies and had them meet with the heads of different functions who gave overviews, and they got to see and interact and ask questions hands-on. What kind of careers are involved in these functions? What do you do? What is it like to be living the life of a regulatory professional or a QA engineer or an R&D scientist? They got to hear all that. And these are the companies: Bard, CardioMEMS, St. Joseph's Translation is now called T3. That's the one you'll be visiting this afternoon, and some of the other clinical hospitals locally. Now, this is just a flow chart to show the upper part, the flow of activities in a typical medical device product life cycle, all the way from concept evaluation, the big blocks of activities. It goes through preclinical development, regulatory submissions, clinical studies, manufacturing validations, final regulatory approvals, and then market release. So this is generally the theme and script of all product development wherever you go, in whichever organization, whether it be a startup or a large kind of company. And in terms of the functions, I list them below here. Typical medical industry functions comprise of R&D, quality, regulatory, clinical, manufacturing, marketing, and all these others. But here is Raphael's point. We have looking at the functions. You could go into any of these functions, really. In medical device industry, that's one of the interesting things, that don't think you're limited only to being an R&D engineer, an R&D scientist. You can get into QA, you can get into regulatory. They do need people with problem-solving skills. Many of these functions want people with analytical and problem-solving skills. So engineering backgrounds help a lot. And many engineers transition later in their lives too. Engineers and scientists too. I'm talking the whole mix. And people get into business development. All these are functions in these companies where you can have valid careers. So what we are generally outlining as 4 focus areas in terms of career and development this program is product development, comprising the gamut from early research phase all the way through preclinical testing. Then the regulatory and clinical, those are 2 functions. So those are again another combination of area. Quality and manufacturing, and business, finance, and marketing. So depending on the electives you take, depending on how you position yourself and your interest, you could target any of those careers in this, as in terms of based on these focus areas. And subsequently, you can make moves as well. You're young in your careers. People make moves after 5, 10, 15 years in this industry. So you don't have to be stuck in one function all along. You show value, you learn things on your own, you can move on. And here, I want to now talk about what are we doing. This is the first batch, the first 10 of them. And one of the areas of high priority for me is coming from industry, placement of these students. I want to make sure they're all well placed. There's a professional master's program, and we as a, as the offering entity, Georgia Tech, we want to make sure that they get very well placed, and we do all they can for them. So we are contracted with the career coaching services through the College of Business, which provides very specialized career coaching with these instructors coming from the College of Business in Georgia Tech. And my students are getting started with that on the 10th of March, 3 successive Mondays, 10th, 17th, and the 31st. 24th is a spring break day. Between these 3 weeks plus individual sessions, they're going to get some very high power career tools and tips to market themselves. Because when they present themselves in interviews, they're going to show that they learned all this, and this program is new, and they got to broadcast this program to get the benefits and to be able to correctly articulate, and so that they can correctly get understood by the organization where they can be placed. In fact, some of the companies have already written to me and saying that your students look good. I can waive some of the experience requirements for them. I don't need them to come in at this level. I can take them at the next level. So they're in that stage right now. But this has to be also this two-way. I have to broadcast it, which I am doing, but my students also have to individually broadcast it. Only then they can get the maximum benefit. So this is the reason why we're getting this for them. So with this now, I'm coming to now some more philosophical and pictorial slides. This is just to show when people like me, and I don't know if anybody else wants to join me. Raphael has often said, but I'll not speak on his behalf on that. But we all entered the industry cold, with no structured programs, no training. And the best analogy I can give is the deer in the headlights syndrome. Something was flashing on us. We didn't know which way to go. We were looking all over, and we learned along the way.
And that still happens today.
That's the humility. That's the humility part of Raphael. Okay, but now you wanted to do this. You're going in. You can go and roar, guys. There's nothing stopping you, and you set your sights much further. But now I want to take a moment and just end this part of the presentation on a very, very personal note. What is the satisfaction that you can get out of a career in this area? It's very, very deep. For many of us, there's a lot of hard work, a lot of challenges. This is a career in industry where there's never a dull moment for most of us, unlike many other industries. It's just phenomenal. But once you deal with it, get on top of it and get some good outcomes, the satisfaction you get is something immeasurable. And I'm going to share one little personal example here. The person you see on the right is my biomaterials mentor, Professor Robert Bayer, who is a renowned biomaterials expert, one of the founders of the Society for Biomaterials. And he put me into every company as a consultant of the first 20 years of my career. And he continues till this day to be my mentor, philosopher, and guide. But the lady you see to his right is his mother, dear mother. What happened is in 1988, I was involved in a team which we produced, for those days, a breakthrough product for the company, worked really, really hard, first part of her career. This looks like a simple plastic tube or a polymer tube. There's tremendous amount of science and technology here. It's got collagen coating inside and outside, control release product. It's got mechanically tailored, polymeric substrate, and tremendous amount of animal studies, clinical studies went into it. Finally, FDA approved it via a complex PMA panel presentation in 1987. It was a tough challenge for them because this is the toughest product they had approved at that time, close to the heart. This is a pipe that carries blood right from out of your heart to the rest of the body. This thoracic aorta. Okay, this is life and death. When this aorta gets damaged, they're dead. It's fatal. And now this is the only substitute surgeons can do. They can cut that length and suture it to the healthy artery in the two ends, and then blood flows. And it has to last for several years. So the challenge when we designed that product with all the complexities, we thought it'll last for 5 years. And we are very satisfied with the 5-year outcome because patients are getting old who needed this, and 5 years is good enough. So we are satisfied at that. And when we released the product, we are all expecting that if it lasts 5 years, it's great. But then my mentor, Dr. Bayer, who knew that I was working in this area, he called me one day, said, Satya, I know your product is just going to get approved or it's already approved. But tell me, my mother needs that implant. and give me the details of the clinical study. Is it doing well? Are you having any problems? What are the inside stories? And I told him all that I knew. I was very enthusiastic, of course. And then from then on, yearly, he kept updating me about her condition. And yesterday, I called him just because I told him I'm talking today. I want to be correct in my facts. What's the situation? He said his mother had it for over 15 years and she passed away just 1 year ago at the age of 93. And this picture is just 1 month before she passed away. She had a fully functional life. The graft performed beautifully. And even to this day, the surgeons, this is the gold standard of product for the surgical community. It's a product called HemoShield, that's the brand name. It's coated on collagen, that's why it's called HemoShield. Collagen resorbs and gets, controlled release. So why I'm saying to you is, of course, it's a major team effort. I didn't do it individually, but I had a good role in it in many aspects. But the satisfaction you get to hear of such things like this, there's just no money can buy that. It's just a priceless satisfaction. My own mother has the 2 cataract lenses that I was involved in producing as well. But these are the kind of things that make you feel like waking up in the morning and saying, I want to work, continue this career, really. So that's what I wanted to share with you all, life and career in this industry, what it's all about. And now I'm going to show you some video clipping before I let my faculty loose for a discussion here. And first clip I want to show you is we had this cardiac surgeon, renowned cardiac surgeon from University of Chicago. He's the head of thoracic surgery there. We had him as our first guest lecturer in the month of September, just about a month after the program started. His background, his name is Dr. Val Jivanandam. By the way, he voted yes for you, for your product in PMA, for CardioMEMS. He's one of the 3 who voted yes. He told us about your product too in his lecture. But anyway, he specializes in surgical management of heart failure, but he's particularly an expert in high-risk cardiac surgery. When everybody else has given up around the world, he goes around the world teaching techniques and they come to him. He's that kind of a guy. And he's performed more than 1,000 heart transplants. And he's a pioneer with heart assist devices, left ventricular assist devices. Those are the things which you use for bridge to transplantation patients who are waiting for a transplant. And he's the first surgeon in the world to successfully implant the CardioVAD, which is a revolutionary left ventricular assist device. And he's also the only surgeon on the FDA device panel. So he understands, he told us in the talk that not only prior to being on that device panel, I had contempt for FDA. I used to look down on them. I used to think they were a bunch of bureaucrats doing nothing but paper pushing. But now I got into the surgical panel of the FDA. I vote on products. I look at their side of the picture. They're responsible for public, for safety and efficacy of medical products. Anything goes wrong, they're in the CNN news more than anybody else right away. So I now understand their situation much better. I'm more sympathetic and understanding of them. That's his comment about that. But now I'll show you a 2-minute segment. He of course talked for over 4 hours. But I'm going to show you a 2-minute clip with all my abilities in doing this. Plus I had some help from IT. We were able to pull it off, but I do hope you'll enjoy it. This is
now
the guy.
You can see that the pump
These are the
is in
slides
place.
on the right.
It's doing 90% of the work. Do you see how happy the heart is? Well, that's because it's not doing any work anymore. So that's kind of what I look at when I'm on vacation, when I'm not doing any work. You're nice and happy and no stress. That's kind of what the heart does when you have one of these devices in place. So you're going to ask me, what is the life of this? What can people do? Well, the only thing they can't do is swim, and they basically do everything else. So they can drive, they can go hunting out in the woods, they can go to the gym. This gentleman actually has renal failure and a VAD, so he's on dialysis as well as a VAD. This is a testament to modern matrimony, so just realize that she is on a VAD, and he is carrying her batteries. This gentleman actually was dying, and he survived to see the birth of his children. And this gentleman actually is an ophthalmologist who's on a VAD right here, and he did over 1,000 operations on a VAD. So there isn't anything that somebody can do on a VAD that limits them, other than the fact that they got to take care of their drive line and they can't swim.
How long does the procedure take?
Not a bad trade-off.
About 4 to 5 hours. So the current VADs are great. They're efficacious, but there are disadvantages. They require a sternotomy. They're often a repeat procedures. We have to deal with adhesions. There's bleeding. Remember, if their right heart fails, they have right heart failure. So mechanically, these things can last a very long time. The hardware device practically will never wear out and probably outlive the patient. The HeartMate 2 does have ruby bearings, but they're proven to be very stable, upwards of 8 years. So I've created this term called effective longevity. In other words, if mechanically these things will last forever, what prevents these patients from living forever? And what prevents them are things such as cerebrovascular accidents or strokes, which can be embolic or hemorrhagic, infections. If an infection occurs with this device, it's incurable because it's not like you can take out this device, wait for it to heal, or put a new device in place. Bleeding due to low pulsatile flow and acquired von Willebrand's disease caused by high shear.
Okay, I'll stop there. Now I'll come to the
a
next.
lot longer. So
Oh,
that's the difference between US and
I
European
didn't pause.
approval process,
What is
even
this?
Canadian.
Okay. I'll come to the next one in a second before I give his bio. So I thought in fairness I should talk about the bio of each of your speakers before I let them loose on you. Here is a regulatory expert. We had the next lecture. He's an ex-FDA insider. So the reason I contacted him was I wanted the students to get a flavor of what is to work with FDA from an insider's perspective and from an outsider's perspective. The outsider was, of course, from C.R. Bard, Vice President, who presented all the lectures on how do you prepare submissions, how do you negotiate with FDA, what are the inside things, what are the kind of little tricks you do, things like that. But from an insider point of view, how does FDA review the outside applications? What are the processes? What do they do? What do they look for? Things like that. He shared some case studies. His own background is currently the founder president of Cardiomed Device Consultants. It's a regulatory consulting company. He conducts on-site camps in big companies like Abbott and Boston Scientific to train their staff on regulatory processes. This is how much the companies invest in these kinds of things. They have on-site training 2-3 days. He goes around the world. He conducts that. And prior to that, he was regulatory affairs vice president at Micromed and then FDA. And he has extensive regulatory and engineering experience because he's a mechanical engineer. He's done a lot of work in coronary stents, angioplasty. You also work in angioplasty. So semi-octave is in that area. He was in the cardiovascular device panel of FDA. So now I will have him for the next 2 minutes. I'm not going to keep it long, but just to give a flavor of the kind of things that they talked about.
So once the submission goes into FDA, your PMA, they have 45 days to file the application. So they form an internal committee, which includes the compliance people, all the regulatory affairs people, and everybody.
Some of the lectures we could not get the video of the person. We could see their slides, hear their sounds, and students could talk to them from this room. We have very good recording capabilities. Jesus takes care of that. But some days, due to something at their end, some glitch, we could not see their face or see it only for a little bit. But everything else was there. So the students could ask them questions. They used to interrupt them in between. It was like a town hall meeting format in some cases we had. So it ended up being very useful, but that's why you may not see the pictures with some of them.
Staff comes in, the engineering review team, the preclinical animal study team, all of these people do a cursory review of the application to make sure all the pieces are there for them to have a meaningful review. So once the application is filed within 45 days, clock starts ticking still, and your basically overall review time is still 180 days, but the decision about filing or not is made within the first month and a half. Okay, and at the end of the day, once the FDA completes their review, they may ask, before 180 days is over, they may ask advisory panel, as you mentioned, one of the panel members spoke, in your school there. So basically, this panel is bunch of people, experts in the specific device area. There are biostatisticians as well. There are representatives from public organizations and FDA and the company. They get together and almost sometimes day long, from 8 a.m. it could go even till 10 p.m. in some cases. You present your case, FDA presents their case, and then panel has a discussion of data available to them to determine the safety and effectiveness of the product. And at the end of the day, panel advises FDA approval with conditions, or disapproval. Okay, none of these decisions actually mean anything, you know, as far as the overall approval of the product. I mean, it does mean a lot, obviously, you know, to FDA to get that advice from the panel, but FDA can accept, deny, or revise the recommendations of the advisory panel in order to, at the end of the day. So FDA makes the final decision, but advisory panel is there to just publicly provide input to the FDA what they think about the product. Okay, it's just basically covering all the bases for FDA. In case something goes wrong with the PMA product, they can say, well, panel evaluated all of that, and everybody was all the experts.
Okay, I cut it there. Now I'll go to the next speaker, who is going to be, let's see. Okay, the next speaker, this is a former boss of mine, C.R. Bard, but he's now a nationally renowned expert in Six Sigma and lean operations. Dr. Ray Chesser is currently Director of Quality and Process, Cigna Healthcare. He's been in the medical device and healthcare industry all his career. Has received his Six Sigma black belt from a renowned expert. And also he has been a recipient of the prestigious Shingo Prize for lean operations. So he's one of the high power resources. He teaches these programs in addition to working full-time in industry. So he's got and he's in fact contemplating if we want teaching a full-fledged elective in this area for our program too, when needed for the full semester. Here he's going to come along.
So we need to identify events that are causing our process to go out of control as soon as possible, stop the line, fix it, and then go back into production without making a lot of bad product. So then we come into the 50s and 60s and 70s, and that's where Deming, I'm sure most of you have heard of Dr. Deming, went to Japan after World War II. He's credited with the Japanese renaissance in manufacturing, and we all know what transpired from there. We don't have much of a domestic electronics industry or other industries anymore because of Japan's capabilities in manufacturing, the auto industry, and so forth. So Deming, the Japanese, and then ultimately in the 80s, the folks in America started to wake up and realize our lunch was being eaten by the Japanese, and we better do something different. So they put in place the Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award. Then Motorola is really credited with coming up with the idea of Six Sigma. And again, it's based on basic statistics, but their idea was that quality typically was being measured in percentage. And you'll still see that. If it's 99% good, it must be good. Well, if you think about Motorola and their products where they make millions and millions and millions of widgets, 1% is terrible. And when you start thinking that 1% bad is terrible, then you can begin to appreciate the idea behind Six Sigma. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then finally, not finally, but Jack Welch, who I'm sure all of you recognize, became the CEO, and one of the presidents, actually, of one of his divisions brought Six Sigma into one of those divisions, and their waste and quality improved dramatically, and Welch grabbed onto that, moved it across GE, and demonstrated that it's not only effective in manufacturing but also in services, because GE Capital also became very effective at using Six Sigma. So you can see here it's moving on close to 100 years that many of these techniques and basic principles behind Six Sigma have been in place. And as Satya was mentioning before some of you came in this morning, it's just amazing how many organizations, how many companies still don't use some of these basic principles to design their products, design their processes, and control their processes. So there's still a lot of opportunity out there for you guys, if you're interested in this stuff, to take this and take it further in your career and try to implement.
Okay, that's a prompt for me to go to the next speaker. The little bit blank I put there. And the next one is a very interesting one. He's a serial, oh, sorry, I'm going to get to the next one, sorry. He's a serial entrepreneur. This is a word I picked up from him, and another jargon as well, very interesting one, I'll tell you in a minute. Till then, I had only known of serial killers, but then this is a serial entrepreneur. But anyway, Rob Michaels, he's a classical Southern California crash entrepreneur. Okay, nuts and bolts guy. He has taken 6 companies through sale from ideation. The last one he took was for $1 billion. He sold the core valve company to Medtronic, and he gave the core valve case study to us. He described the whole case study, and I'm going to give a clipping. I'm going to give a little longer of his because he speaks so directly, and he gives so much advice to young people who are interested in entrepreneurship. He gave real life story. So he's currently he's on to his 7th one, CEO of Cardiac Valve. And he knows how to get money, how to go after deep pockets, how to capture venture capitalists. He's a great resource for my class. He's in fact, many of them have contacted him privately, individually, and to get connected with other kind of startup company founders in Southern California and Northern California areas. And he's been very supportive. And formerly, he was a chief operating officer in Corval, CEO of Venpro, and he has got this track record. So with this, I will now go and get on to his clip. I've given a little longer for him because I thought he said something very interesting to my students.
Folks to actually accept and adhere to all of the rules put in place by the FDA for their study. So why did it work for us to go international first? Well, we've talked about this before. We were totally focused on the interventional cardiologist, and we knew even from the days when we were doing the trial that there were lots and lots of patients. We had the cost-benefit model that I've talked about before. We had a waiting list of hospitals that wanted to get on this bandwagon. And this is sort of a crass statement. We have never had a need of a sales force. We didn't have sales specialists or salespeople. We had clinical specialists because our challenge was to teach people this new technique and this new technology. And it was true. The moment it was known that we had CE mark, we had a waiting list of 55 hospitals in 7 countries in Europe, which grew to, as we went on, about 100 at any given time. To get on the waiting list, there was a requirement list with 10 specific things that the hospital had to have or do or be to even get on the list. So this is not your average product. This is something that doesn't happen very often, and that is what, if you're doing a first ever that everybody wants versus a Me Too. We're not going to talk distribution organizations here, but I'm a firm believer if you do this, and if you have a product that has a high average sell price and a high margin, you never want to give away total control of your sales and marketing, which means I've always done hybrid distribution. And what does that mean? Some countries, you don't want to be direct. Don't ever think that you can sell direct in Italy or Spain. In some countries, you want to keep the control, because unless you have the control in some regions, you cannot really say that you know how to sell this product and what all the ins and outs are. So there's got to be a couple of countries that you control your destiny yourself, and you learn how to do it, and then you can go tell the others how to do it. So what did it buy to go international first? Well, focus, focus, focus again. We were able to go from over 3 generations to a CE mark of a commercially viable product in essentially less than 3 years.
Rob Michaels.
We were able to validate a first ever technology. And when we originally did the market research on what this PAM-TAM SAM was, and we
discussed that with many strategics and with many Wall Street analysts and VC, and I can tell you now, nobody believed the numbers. Nobody believed the numbers until we showed them the hockey stick. So deal with skepticism as you go on, and deal well with it. Deal with rejection, because doing the startup is just like selling. You get rejected at every turn, you get pounded into the ground, and you got to climb back out of it. But believe. If you believe, you'll get there. We definitely, one big price CoreValve paid, we ended up with a substantial USA delay against a very deep-pocket competitor. So Edwards, while they fell behind us in achieving their CE mark, they did have the wherewithal to get through the FDA rigor, and so they are currently with a product on the US market for inoperable patients, whereas Medtronic just finished their trial now for inoperables and presented it at a recent TCT a week ago in San Francisco with data that was much better than the Edwards product, and with an acknowledgement from the FDA in that they do not have to go to a panel meeting, and so CoreValve will be on the market probably by February or March of next year, 2014. That's a full 2 years almost behind Edwards. So that was a big price we paid for not going to the FDA or not being able to get through the FDA is actually a more honest statement, a more accurate statement. So the other factors, just a few pieces of wisdom if you want more than anything else here. You got to find your own strength, and you got to love what you do, because if you don't love what you do, you'll never take one of these to term. And I know there's a lot of talk in academia these days, and it's very fashionable, this work-life balance. It's a myth, folks. If you want to be an entrepreneur, don't take those courses, because you're not going to do less than 70 or 80 hours a week. I consider myself semi-retired right now, and I'm doing 50. So it's a hard life. It's not an easy life, but it's very satisfying. I spent 12 years in a large corporation and walked away from it, and been doing this for 20 years now, and I would never go back. I've been asked after selling companies to stay on, and once you have experienced that freedom of operation is what I would call it. Yes, you still have a board you answer to, and you still have the VC you answer to, and so on, but it's not the same. It's what I talked about earlier. It's facing a problem at 9 in the morning and working on the solution by 10:30. As opposed to 3 weeks later or 3 months later, and having to have consulted 7 layers of management. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, back to networking, back to talking to people, back to knowing to people. Find the people that complement your skills and share the spoils. I've never done a company where not everybody, down to the janitor, down to the people that come and clean the offices, have been option holders and shareholders. And I fired people in my days, and I've hired people in my days. And one thing I'm very proud to say is that most of the people I've ever worked with, that I've done startups with, are willing to come back over and over again. The team we have here, 2/3 of it is out of the CoreValve team. Some come out of the IVT team, and some came out of the Venpro team. So it's a group of people, and it's important to know what you're not good at, and to know people that are good at that and can do it for you and with you. Focus, 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 focus. Don't think of anything else when you're doing something. And that's in 2 ways. you can do 2 or 3 startups at the same time. The same way, within a startup, you cannot do 2 or 3 different things. And it happens very often. You find a base technology, and it's exciting, and you can think of 5 other things you can do with this technology, but don't do it. If you've established where you can take this first and how you can be successful with, and put the other ones in a drawer and wait with them until you're done with this one. Because if you try and do 2 or 3 things at the same time, you're just splitting your resources too much, and you won't get there. Adapt, adapt, adapt. It's for those who've been in the Marines, listen and learn. There's a lot of people out there that are a lot smarter than you. If you can acknowledge that, and if you can accept that, and if you can listen and learn from them, then use them. In a startup, you can probably not afford to have those people in your organization, but you can afford to use them in many different ways. You can get these guys on the hook. You can get them on the hook by making them believe in your technology. You can get them on the hook because it's something that they really feel can help their patients. You can get them on the hook financially, even though you don't have money. How do you do that? Options, options, options. Make sure every time you do a round of financing that you convince the investors that your option pool should be large enough so you can give options.
Okay, yeah. I just gave a little longer clip of this person. I thought, some of the things you're saying was so cute and nice advice, and just felt that they're very real.
Very smart guy.
Yeah. The last one I want to hit you all with is a 2-minute clip of one of my former bosses in Alcon Labs. He is now a innovation leader in the medtech space, Dr. John Sheets, currently a chief scientific officer at Anika Therapeutics. He has extensive background in medical device industry, leading both R&D and white space innovation. He was formerly a senior vice president at Boston Scientific in their corporate research. Prior to that, CTO of Bausch & Lomb, he was CEO of Hoya Surgical and at Alcon Labs, where I worked with him. So I will now have him, this is a short one, talk about innovation. His talk to us was all about innovation frontiers and innovation.
In the first paragraph up here, it talks about the fear of cannibalization and cites the great book that Clayton Christensen wrote called The Innovator's Dilemma. And if you're not familiar with Clayton Christensen's work, I highly recommend you read one of his books because they have great insights. But this is the issue that big companies face, is that they get so successful that success in one space prevents them from innovating again, and I'll talk about that more later. And so this MIT article just speaks to that. And so this is an issue that every company faces regardless of its size, and the only way to overcome that problem, the first step towards positive change is always an acknowledgement of that's a problem. So as we go to this next slide, this is an article that I'm going to speak to that really has a nice review of this idea of how you can grow both your core business, that's the business you're successful with, as well as create new businesses. Then that's what you want to innovate with. You've seen it, and you can see this slide. Adaptive growth in modern markets.
We can see it, yeah.
Okay, great. So what you're trying to accomplish is in your core business, you want to keep it going, but you have to consistently rejuvenate the business. Challenge the assumptions of why you're successful with your products, why the customers are buying that. And it's all around the customer need. I'm sure most of you have heard the quote from Henry Ford that says, if I gave customers what they wanted, what I would have developed is a faster horse. That's not what you want to do. You want to develop what they're going to be, their new need. And customers cannot tell you what they need. You can only gain that knowledge by observing. So you have to keep doing that with your core business. Similarly, as you try to disrupt and go into new businesses, you have to be very entrepreneurial. And if you look at the business examples out there where people have tried to copy the success of somebody else, you have to do things all the way. So not too many years ago, the major airlines all tried to become like Southwest. They loved the Southwest Airlines model, how successful it was and everything about it. And after a few years, some of them succeeded and some of them didn't. The ones that tried to build the Southwest model off of their core business and leverage the existing business, they failed because they really had to be entrepreneurial. They had to act like a small company. They had to act and think in a way that says, if we don't make this go, we don't have jobs. That same thing happens in healthcare. Back in the early 90s, when Ethicon existed in Somerville, New Jersey, the very insightful and a very entrepreneurial leader of R&D back then, by the name Alan Levy, he licensed the first trocar that led to the creation of Ethicon Endosurgery. But he knew if he put that business in New Jersey, that the Ethicon suture business, that at that point was billions of dollars, would smother the little infant. And so what did they do? They put Ethicon Endosurgery out in Cincinnati. Similarly, when they licensed the first stent patents from Julio Palmaz, and they created J&J Interventional, they didn't locate it right in Somerville. They put it 30 minutes down the freeway in Warren. That business grew, that finally led to the acquisition of Cordis, and that's where Cordis's headquarters.
Okay, I think that concludes my video clipping saga and part of my presentation. This is my first time doing this kind of audio visual techniques, and I just tried it out, and I'm glad the sound and audio and all that came out well. Thanks to Jesus and his group as well. So with that, I would like to now open the floor. Enough of me. I'm going to have my faculty, Dr. Ms. David Stern come from CardioMEMS, Tiffany Carr from GCMI, and all of you for a Q&A session, and Julie as well. So can I ask Julie to go first, followed by Tiffany, Raphael, and David? David, can you stay for longer?
Yeah,
I don't want to know how your time is
sure.
doing. Okay. Yes, Julie.
Yeah, so I just really briefly wanted to welcome you all here for this recruiting event for the BioID program. And really, I want to tell you how enthusiastic I am about this program. I am continually impressed by the quality of information that is given to the students, the generosity of the people who are involved with this. It is truly striking to me. I am not an industry person. I did my PhD right after finishing my undergraduate, and I've always been in research and a professor. And for me, I am extremely impressed with what is done in the medical device industry. It's a whole other world. The quality, the information that needs, and the rigor that needs to go into medical device design is extremely impressive to me. And I learn a lot. Every time I'm involved with this program, I learn something. And so I really encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity to participate in this program. The opportunities are incredible, from clinical experience, exposure to the kinds of guest speakers that you have here, the site visits that you have, and everything is available to you. You can really tailor this program to whatever you want it to be and as much as you want it to be. And so I really encourage you to take advantage of that, because it's just incredible. And I want to thank all the others who are participating in this, like Sathya and Raphael and the other instructors. So I hope you all come, because it's fantastic.
So when you all get into the program, those of you who come in, Julie will be a key person who will be helping out a lot with the right kind of electives to take inside the Georgia Tech system, and any other interactions with other departments. Julie is like an experienced academician here. She knows her way around. She's been a great resource for my program, for my students. So she'll be one of your mentors in those areas.
And I just wanted to say one other thing too is, I also come from a biomaterials background, and for me, this is a really nice complement to my own career and who I am in this field, because it's really exposing me to what's involved in medical device development, and the whole business side of it. And, I don't see myself as someone who would go into industry, but, for me to learn about this and be involved in this program really helps to complete who I am as a professional in the biomaterials.
That comment, I came from a similar background like you. In fact, both of our advisors know each other very well. But what I would say to you is I was like you when I graduated. I didn't know I could survive industry. I was thrown into the ocean, and then 30 years later, I come out of it alive.
Oh, yeah.
So you could have survived. That's not what I'm making. You could.
I know I could have. And that,
When I could, I'm sure you could.
What impresses me so much is what goes on in industry. That I think it would be a great life to be involved in that side too. I've been on the research academic side. But for me, what's exciting and what I've kind of enjoyed always is interacting with students and guiding students. And so for me, this is an opportunity to further the dimension by which I do that. And I think from a very practical point of view, because I really think this is going to help to develop the leaders and who are, positioned to really make a great impact in the industry. And so, for me to be involved and to witness that is extremely gratifying and enjoyable to me. And the other thing I would say is, I think this program is useful and appropriate for people at all stages. People who are just coming out from undergraduate degree, but I would say even our PhD students would benefit from this because you're really learning about what's needed for industry. And so everyone, needs to know that if that's where you want to be.
Thank you.
I would say probably it changed the way you looked at your science too. I know.
Oh yeah. It's a much more complete view of everything involved.
Tiffany?
Yeah, I'm Tiffany Karp. I'm the executive director of the Global Center for Medical Innovation. We're just down the street, and I guess I'm giving everyone a tour and giving you an overview.
It's the last item before they head to the airport.
Yep, so we can make it quick. I know everyone will be tired. But you'll see a medical device development, prototyping, commercialization center a couple miles down the road. I'm also very excited to kind of be aligned with your program here. So I come from the business side of medical device development. I started my career in management consulting and investment banking in the financial services industry and gotten involved in raising money for a tissue engineering company about 12 years ago. Joined the management team of that company and was thrown into the ocean, so to speak. That was my crash course in medical device development, wearing lots of different hats along the way, including regulatory work, reimbursement, manufacturing cost analysis, business development, investor relations. And then I moved to Atlanta and I did another startup here in Atlanta before joining GCMI to bring that from a grant application to an operating entity a couple of years ago. And so I think just reiterating what all the themes and everything here, medical device development and commercialization is incredibly messy. And the multidisciplinary aspect of, I think, this program and, truly at the end of the day, particularly coming, as engineers, understanding the intersection of business, science, clinical medicine, government, and being able to interact and communicate with all those people is critical, kind of the fundamental critical piece, I think, to success in executing. It's one thing to have an idea and a promising clinical market, but if you can't work with others, I think in a team approach that's not dysfunctional, you could have the cure to cancer and it's not going to see the light of day to kind of jump through all those hoops. So I commend all of you for looking at this as a way to, branch out of engineering and really understand all the different aspects it takes to get something to market.
I'm sure you'll all enjoy the visit to GCMI. Tiffany has built a fantastic facility there for the Atlanta. She's really going to be the hub of the local medical device economy that's going to be coming out of here. There are quite a few entrepreneurs.
We never know what's going to walk through the door on any given day.
There are going to be quite a few investors, even from as far as California, are all considering investing in a big way in this area. And Tiffany is one of the central players to make that happen. Thank you, Tiffany. Raphael.
So I think that's like a perfect intro to me because I will be walking through her door with my staff this afternoon because we're using her facility to build clinical parts that we're going to be using in humans in about 2 months. So,
so they all know your product development head for the local
yeah.
startup
So
company?
let me introduce myself. So Tiffany and I have known each other for a couple of years. So currently I'm heading up product development for a biotech company called Clearside Biomedical here in Atlanta. I took that job just a year ago. I know I haven't even seen you since I did that, but I'll give you a little bit of a better intro than I did last night about myself. So I started in this industry quite by accident, I should say. So I mentioned last night that I was a student here in the early to mid 80s in mechanical engineering. I have my undergrad from Tech in mechanical engineering. And at the time, it's a very interesting story. This university in the state of Georgia was looking at how do we put together a bioengineering program because we think this is a big future for the state of Georgia for biotechnology. And so a few folks were hired, including Dr. Yoganathan that you just met this morning. He came over sometime in that mid-80s period. But two of his colleagues, one that since is retired, Ray Vito, and Bob Neeram, who is still here, and I'm glad that he's still here. But Ray and Bob and Ajit and a few others were instrumental in building this bioengineering program. And it started around that time when I was here. And so what happened was, I'll give you the quick story because it's kind of funny. The winter of my junior year, when I was already interviewing with car companies, because that's what I came here to do. I came here to become a mechanical engineer and go design cars in Detroit. I had already a job with General Motors up in Saginaw, Michigan. And Ray and Bob came up to me and they said, you know, you should consider this new emerging field of bioengineering. And I looked at them and I said, are you guys nuts? I mean, I don't know anything about the human body or medicine and I have no interest in it. You know, I came here to design cars. I've been wanting to do that since I was 5 years old. You know, I'm like the typical car guy. I used to take apart my dad's Ford and put it back together. And, you know, I've been doing that since I was a kid. And one of these professors gave me a book to read over the winter break. And they said, read this book. And when you come back after Christmas, we'll discuss it. I said, all right, you know, I guess I'll read the book. So the book was essentially a physiology book, but written by engineers. Written by an engineer who later became a doctor. And so they kind of knew how my brain worked, so they gave me this book. I read it, and I really became interested in human physiology because physiology is really the mechanics of how your body works, right? So I came back and they asked me, what do you think about the book, Rafi? And I said, well, you know, it was kind of interesting, but I'm still going to work for GM. I said, all right, you can go work for GM, but if you find it interesting, why don't you go audit a class, and I think it was in physiology at Emory, and just sit through the lecture hall. And this is when they were starting to build the relationship with Emory, which, by the way, is one of the strongest relationships in the country that you'll find. And so if you guys don't have a good medical background, that is another reason to come here, because you can tap into this Emory relationship. So long story short, I audited this class. I really became hooked into this whole medical field. And at the time, it was a kind of burgeoning field. And so all of my junior and senior electives were then became bio electives. So these guys, these professors had just put together the program. So I sat through Dr. Yoganathan's first class, which was a rheology class. So it was fluid mechanics, but applied to the human body. And all of my electives were like that. I really became hooked. I left. I then took a job with DuPont, the DuPont company in Delaware. And they were starting to get into biomedical engineering. In fact, I had the privilege of working on the first automated DNA sequencer in the world. So we had a team of really smart people. I was like by far the dumbest person on the totem pole. And I usually am, but that's fine. Actually, one of the advice pieces I'll give you is always surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, and then you'll look good. So I got a chance to work on human sequencing well before anyone knew what that was. DuPont put a machine together. And then I went back to grad school, to UAB, because UAB, the program they had in BME that was just starting as well, they basically threw you into medical school for 2 years. And I figured, well, if I'm going to get into this field, I better learn as much as I can about medicine. And so I basically went through medical school, the first 2 years of medical school at the University of Alabama in Birmingham, a great program. And then when I left, I took a job with C.R. Bard, one of their divisions here in Atlanta. Did that and worked on my business degree at night. So that's how I got into the field, and that was, late 80s. So I've been in it for a little while. What I think is really interesting about this program that we've put together, and I asked Satya to put this slide back up, is that the program, we're trying to model the program around the entire development process in this industry. And so you will get in depth into each of those diamonds that he has on there, as well as understand the functions of a typical device company. Whether it's big or small, it doesn't matter. You have to go through this process. So I'm on my third startup now, but I've got 15 years experience in large companies as well. And I can tell you, it doesn't matter the size of the company, you've got to go through this process. And so think of this program in that way, that we will take you through the entire product development process. We've done it multiple times successfully, and as Dr. Wise said this morning, sometimes you learn the most from the unsuccessful events, but that's really the point of this program. And I think that's where we're different from the other programs around the country. The other programs have some focus areas. We're trying to, this is our focus area here, what you see on the wall. So that's really the point of what I wanted to make this morning.
Thank you, Raphael. David Stern from CardioMEMS.
Sure, I just wanted to make a couple of points. So, CardioMEMS is a medical device company up on the 4th and 5th floor. If you come to this program, I can't guarantee you that you'll be able to get a job with us when you graduate, but you might, because we're big believers in Georgia Tech and the Georgia Tech Biomedical Engineering program. We have several recent graduates working there now, and I'm glad you brought the slide up, because some of them are not in the more traditional R&D area, which is what I think most of us go through. Biomedical engineering, can't wait to start designing products, which is fun. But some of the other areas, like the regulatory and the quality and the manufacturing side, have aspects to them which are very unique to medical device companies. You won't find people who doing similar type jobs in other industries, and they're very hard to find, those kind of people. We have a very technical product, and we need people, whether on quality or manufacturing, have to understand how the product works and have to understand how it was designed in order to be able to do those other jobs. But those jobs require some specialty knowledge, and that's usually something you don't see with somebody coming out of an undergraduate program. But it's nice here. They're getting some exposure to it, and so they understand the terminology and kind of the.
That's the exact feedback we've been hearing from several companies around the country, Siemens and Texas Instruments, that it's very hard to find, especially in regulatory, QA, clinical areas. They're finding very difficult. R&D, at least, yes, there is more of it, but in the other areas, they're extremely hard.
Yeah, and our attitude is exactly the same as Raphael's. Like, we try to hire the smartest people possible, because you don't really know what they're going to do in advance.
Right.
And they have to be flexible, and they have to be able to learn really fast. It's like, here's something completely new, figure this out. And we've had tremendous success with the Georgia Tech students doing that. We just hired, in fact, our last quality hire, which was about 2 weeks ago, was a recent graduate, and she just kind of hit the ground running. So when we look at this program, and we work, as Satya mentioned, pretty closely. We've come down, we've lectured, we've brought tours up to kind of see what we're doing, because we have a full functioning company. We have
they've gone beyond the call of duty.
We have a clean room, and
they've given us more than we could ever dream of. They've given their internal documents to us, my students.
And the reason is because we're not being altruistic. We're actually very selfish. We want to have good trained students.
High quality selfishness. very desirable selfishness.
We want you to train good students so we can hire them, and not just even at CardioMEMS, because the other point is that myself, and even more importantly, my boss, who is another serial entrepreneur like Rob Michaels, really believes in Atlanta and the Atlanta area and the Atlanta medical device industry and helping growing it. And we work with Tiffany. In fact, my boss is one of the founders of GCMI. And it's a good medical device community now. It's growing. It's pretty tight knit. Everybody knows each other. Raphael and I met at Bard.
How
we
many
both had
years
less
ago?
gray hair. So, you know, we and people we worked with are in other device companies now locally. You know, we believe that this area is primed for growth, and we want more trained engineers. We want more opportunities. We want to be able to see GCMI, you know, grow and nurture more companies, and we need a talent pool. So this is really important that this thing works, and so we support it very strongly.
Yeah, in fact, that's a good point. If I can mention just a plug for Atlanta, because I've been here for almost 2 decades now. So Atlanta, in terms of devices, has 3 anchor companies, what I would call. And Dave, David's been here as long as I have. So out east is CR Bard. In fact, the second largest division of Bard, where Dave and I worked. I've done 2 tours through Bard. You've done
just one.
And in the radiology, right? So that division, Biomedical, is close to $1 billion in sales. So a lot of graduates from here go to Bard. In fact, I have personally hired, when I was there as their R&D director, at least 24 engineers from Georgia Tech. So then the second anchor company here is now Alcon Medical. It used to be CibaVision, part of Novartis. Novartis bought Alcon, and so now they've changed the name to Alcon. But that is north of us here. Then a little bit north and west, there's Kimberly-Clark. Kimberly-Clark KC has a medical division, which by the end of this year will spin off to its own standalone company, very much like Tyco did with Covidien. So that is a $1.6 billion, just their medical division, never mind KC as a whole, but just their medical division is $1.6 billion top line. And that will be also located down 400 is the last information that I have. So that is a huge resource and they hire a lot of tech folks as well. And we're going to try and get them more involved in this program. I know it's one of our objectives in the coming year. And then, as is the case with most big cities, all 3 of those companies over the years have spun off a lot of companies. A lot. Some have succeeded, some have not. But the company that I work for now, Clearside, which is a startup, we took technology out of Georgia Tech and Emory in ophthalmology. It's microneedle technology. We're doing injections to the eye. That company, I can say, is a spinoff of Novartis and Alcon because all of us are former Novartis Alcon alumni. And so our entire management team, all 5 of us are Alcon people. And so what happens is wherever you will end up going to work, whether or not you come to this program or not, you will see that like people like to stay in touch. And so when I came to Clearside a year or so ago, it was because of the guys that I knew that I had worked with before at Novartis. They called me and they said, hey, why don't you leave Bard and come over here? And after some reluctance, and I finally figured out what they were doing, I certainly jumped on that opportunity because it's very cool. So you'll find that being in a city that is very networked within medical devices, as this city, as Dave said, is getting, it's pretty well networked now, but it's becoming more so, is very valuable to your career because you will meet people and you will see these people over and over again. And so now we've got GCMI, which is a great organization that's a help to grow this further. We've got, I can tell you, just in the last year, there's been 2 new startup funds that, and I know I'm sure most of you are really interested in the startup thing, right? So that's why I mentioned it. But there's 2 new funds that have just gotten closed to help burgeoning technologies coming out of universities. We've got the GRA, the Georgia Research Alliance, which is a great resource in the city as well. We've got one of the largest incubators in the country, at the Advanced Technology Development Center, ATDC, which has offices all over this tech campus.
And we're starting a ATDC incubator at GCMI.
Oh,
So
wow, I didn't know that.
GCMI
Okay.
is affiliated with Georgia Tech, but we're an external organization. And so there'll be just medical device companies.
Right. Oh, that's cool. So ATDC is a huge resource for the community. There have been more startups and more capital raised. And I forget, my last company is part of ATDC, so I should know this, but I can't remember the figures. But I mean, it's in the billions of dollars of capital that's been raised over the years by ATDC incubated companies. It's really impressive. And it is the oldest incubator in the United States. You wouldn't think that, right? You'd think it'd be someplace in Boston or the Bay Area, but it's not. ATDC is the oldest continuously operating incubator in the United States, started by the State Assembly of Georgia back, I think, in the late 70s, early 80s. So that's another resource. So there's a tremendous number of resources like that in the area that are all set up to kind of grow and foster this industry that we're all part of. So,
And jumping on the Georgia Tech, hiring, we've hired 2 Georgia Tech BME graduates over the past 9 months. We've got an apprentice intern program. DCMI, we've got 2 of our apprentices right here that we're trying to get BME students and expose them to actual building, design for manufacture, building, regulatory analysis, market analysis, and that sort of thing. And we're launching a program this summer with T3 Labs, which I think you're about to go tour, where we'll have, I think, 3 spots allocated, a special program where an engineer will come in and spend a week at GCMI and then a week in the OR at T3 Labs to really kind of make that link between the design and preclinical evaluation.
Great. In fact, you can all think of Atlanta as starting enterprise on the way to becoming a Orange County kind of environment, but with the advantages that traffic is better than Orange County, the real estate prices are far better, and the city, the people are
just nice.
I really
Y'all.
found Atlantans very, very supportive, friendly, and very wonderfully team oriented. There's a lot of energy, enthusiasm, and pockets of outfits here. If they can all come together, which is the process of doing right now, we're going to really, it's a good time to get involved. That's what I think for this whole medical device hub here. And the vision of the Georgia Tech as well, with our Senior Vice President for Research, Steve Cross, and the Dean whom you heard last night, they're all very involved in this program. They believe in it, and they believe in making Atlanta a medical device hub economy. In fact, recently, Tiffany and I participated in a meeting with a well-known investor from California, InCube. They go and invest in many areas around the country. They are medical device entrepreneurs, and they came here. We both presented, and all the senior leadership of Georgia Tech was there. There's a lot of talk about bringing them over here, getting them interested in what all we have to offer, and they're very interested. And we're going to hear about the progress of that initiative in the next few months. So any further questions before we get to the next, which is going to be the student panel? We are going to hear something different, life in GT in Atlanta, and students, my current BioID students are going to be primarily involved in that. And I may just be here quiet and be keeping low profile because I've done my part of talking and some of my faculty also, but then you'll hear a lot more from the students. But are there anything for me and for the rest of my faculty for this session before we wind up? Have we been that clear or that vague? One of the two extremes. The silence indicates that to me. Okay then, shall we move on to the next phase? I'll bring my students. And for those faculty who are here, if you want to participate here, otherwise take a break elsewhere, or if you want to leave, it's fine, but you're most welcome to come for lunch at 12 o'clock.
I have a lunch meeting, but I'll look forward to seeing everyone this afternoon for a tour.
Yep. Will do. Thank you, Tiffany. You bring one of the students out. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
She's gonna be upset. Is she your boss? Or?
Yeah.
Actually convenient. We're going there last. I can just walk in the street to my work and then go back to work.
Yeah, as soon as we get there, I'm just gonna go back on the case.
Should we stand?
Yeah, I think I'm just sitting right up on this. So I think I'm the only one who has a background in psychology and more human factors. Do you see
Working with who?
like human factors? Is that a part of the QA cycle of developing a product, or is that?
Yeah, in fact, ethnography and device friendly,
Right.
user friendliness is a huge part of. If you see the biodesign textbook, one of the people who's written the textbook, Mary Beth Privetera, she's in University of Cincinnati, and her husband is currently the vice president of R&D in local company Bard here, and that's playing a huge role. And we have in fact met with the industrial department chairman here. He has offered electives for this program, so students, there's a good synergy there.
Right. So that's why I kind of since I'm not have the
Because nowadays
engineering
they're
background.
developing devices, but how do you make it user friendly,
Right.
customer friendly, and for people for various settings, because especially point of care, when it comes to hospital based things, coming home now, so many factors are there.
Right. Yeah. So I don't have the engineering background, so some of this is a little over my
That's why
head.
I mentioned this career goes beyond engineering.
Right. Right.
It's not limited to engineering. You can fit in manufacturing, you can fit in QA, you can fit in business development, so many areas.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you all prefer to stand up? Okay, if you like that, that's fine. Now this is really your session, folks, and I'm going to let the new prospective students loose with my current BioID students. So kindly come to participate in this. Please feel free to get started, and anybody wants to facilitate it from your group, Sven, Brett, any of you, you can set the tone for how you want the interaction to be. It's really
probably. I mean, this is for y'all. So basically, just ask us whatever you want to ask us. Put us on the spot. Ask us the tough questions. I mean, ultimately, this is your best chance to get some real insight into the program. So we'll be as frank and honest with you as possible. So
Go down and say who we are.
yeah, American Jet.
We
All right.
kind of did that yesterday.
We did.
Yeah, you can introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I wasn't there yesterday. My name's Natalie. I went to the University of Rochester and graduated in 2013 with a BME degree in cell and tissue engineering concentration, and then decided to come down here. So, and I'm originally from Portland, Maine, so somewhere up north. Yeah, so ask us anything. This is kind of how it was last year.
Go ahead, sure.
Can you guys give us some examples of the technical electives you guys are taking right now?
Yeah, sure. So I'm taking applied Bayesian statistics and a physiology course.
I'm also taking the same physiology course, and I'm taking a CAD course as well. Let's focus on three-dimensional modeling and prototyping.
You may also mention which department is offering that course within Georgia Tech.
The physiology class is in the BME department, and the CAD class is in the MECE department.
I'm taking more industrial design courses, one for advanced biomaterials and one for experimental design and analysis. And I should mention that one of the things that you should, so in the semester you have the opportunity to take 4 classes. That's how it's set out, 4 classes per semester. And some of the electives are not available in the spring, whereas they are available in the fall. And it's like that with pretty much any college you go to. But when you get in, you might want to start asking questions and thinking, well, this first semester, could I instead take a fifth class? And the workload is kind of distributed such that you can, that first semester, really consider, is there an elective that's only available this first spring semester or fall semester that I can't take in the spring that I really want?
Mm-hmm. And I'm also taking the biostatistics class, which is through the BME department as Brett. And I'm also taking technology strategies, which is actually in the College of Business. And that focuses on like IP strategy, which we get in the courses that we take here first semester, but it just kind of goes more in depth into patents and copyrights and trademarks and everything.
So I am also in the CAD class with Natalie. In the mechanical engineering department, and then I am also taking a class in industrial design, human-centered design, so learning about designing for disabilities, inclusive design, universal design, all the principles behind that.
So I'm taking the same classes as Jack. So the beauty of it is that you can also take classes in the College of Business. I'm looking more towards like project management, stuff like that. So we have marketing strategy, technology strategy open. Shauna, who was here yesterday, she's taking marketing strategy. So, any other questions? Did I go ahead?
Go ahead. Sure. Right. For those of you who are working right now, how hard is it to balance like working and the workload of the classes and the program?
So 2 people that are working aren't here
Yeah.
because they're at work. There you go. So Jonathan, he's a doctorate of physical therapy. He works for Emory. It's difficult, but he seems to manage. And then Shauna works for GTRI, which is part of Georgia Tech. I mean, they're both in my group for my project, and they're available as much as they need to be. And obviously, it's more difficult, but I think it's very tough. Like,
they're highly productive people, and they can manage it. If I personally wouldn't be able to have a job and be able to do at least the courses that I'm doing this cycle, because my electives are quite time consuming. And so it may change for you between semesters.
so I'm actually starting an internship next week. So just throw it out there.
Yeah, and then 2 of us also TA, so and that sucks up a lot of time as well. It's doable, but especially that first semester, if that's really something you want to do, try it the first semester, and the workload first semester is a lot less than the workload second semester.
Okay.
One point to add to that, how difficult it is. I found out myself recently, I was amazed. One of the teams we met with a urologist, local practicing urologist clinic. They're very busy commercial urologists in practice. We thought that itself is going to burn them out. But suddenly one of them came to me and said, you know, Satya, just 2 weeks ago, I graduated from your business school in Georgia Tech. Wow, my jaws dropped. I said, how do you find the time for it? He said, no, I worked real hard night and day, 18 months it took me, and I just finished it. I got an MBA as a practicing urologist. So think of that, then you'll feel much better that this is more doable.
I guess if you wanted to, or whoever wants to speak about kind of like the life in Atlanta, like I don't know where you live or how it's been getting acclimated to the area and just kind of things like that.
Well, I had never lived anywhere near here before. So I live in a neighborhood called Virginia Highlands, which is just outside of Midtown. It's like the big park is between me and the school, but it's only about like 2 to 3 miles from here. So I tend to bike to get here most of the time, although there's free parking here, so that's nice. But that's really the thing that I think I noticed the most about the city moving here is that it's really sprawling. And there's like a lot of little pocket neighborhoods that kind of have a different feel. So like Virginia Highlands has like its own little area that has like bars and shops and restaurants and things like that. And then if you go like a couple blocks to the right, you'll be in a whole other area that has its own other little section. So you can kind of go any place and like find a little like niche, which is cool. And I know some other people live closer to campus or maybe a little farther away. So
yeah, I live. If you're on a budget, I live in a cheap area called Home Park. With a bunch of undergrads that are at Georgia Tech. So I just connected with people that I knew here. So I was like, do you know anyone that's looking for extra roommate? And so, and it's right across campus, right next to the graduate living center too. But it's really cheap. So if you're looking for convenient and cheap, that's a good place.
Sven, I think your description last night pretty adequately described Atlanta, if you remember it.
Yeah, that's my description of Atlanta.
Well, they don't know it.
All right, so I grew up on a farm, and I've lived in Dallas, Texas, and I've lived in Istanbul and Turkey, and I've lived in Berlin, and so I kind of have a mix of different places behind me. And I like Atlanta a lot. It's very friendly. And it has, like Natalie was saying, has real pockets of very culturally specific stuff to do that's really balanced. It's not terribly expensive, and it's honestly good fun. But while you're here, I don't want you to judge it too harshly, because I had actually visited Atlanta before, and as I was telling some people last night, Atlanta is a great place to live, but I wouldn't necessarily want to visit there because it doesn't have like that poppy feel of like New York or whatever. But once you actually settle in, it feels really good. I live out in Decatur, some 25 minutes away. The commute isn't bad. It's pretty steady. It doesn't vary from like 30 minutes to 2 hours. The food is good. The rent is cheap. Rent isn't cheap everywhere, but you can find your mix of what's right for your budget and what's right for your lifestyle in Atlanta. I'm very sure of it. Just do a little bit of research ahead of time.
Absolutely, and I mean that's true of the bars, the clubs, all that. Like it depends on what neighborhoods you go to. I mean, you could go to one side of the city one night, another side another night, and have two totally different experiences.
So I live in the graduate dorms. So what I would suggest for anyone who wants to be basically in and out of Atlanta and doesn't want to bring their furniture, their car, and all that. I live in 10th and Home. It is more expensive than what Emily's paying. How much you paying, realistically?
Like 500.
Okay, so I'm paying around $850, so it's $350 more. You get a furnished, very nice apartment.
Mine's furnished too, though.
Yours is furnished. But I get security.
We have deadbolts, so.
But for me, it was a convenient thing to do. I'm from Boston, so that was a much cheaper expense than it would be in Boston for me. But yeah, if you're gonna live on campus, do 10th and Home, not GLC. Because Graduate Living Center is like a freshman dorm feel. 10th and Home is more of an apartment, like it's a legitimate like living place. Yeah.
And feel free to reach out to any of us too. I know like before I came here, I didn't really know these pockets, like what people were talking about. And as soon as I get here, people were like Midtown, Downtown, Edgewood, Cottage Town, all these different towns. And so, feel free to reach out to us if you're kind of confused and
one thing I want to add to that, because I also came to Atlanta recently. If you're driving especially, everywhere there'll be Peach Street and what are the common names? North, I was confused between North Avenue, North Side, everywhere Peach Street, Bethel, all those. There are a lot of peaches and northers here, the road signs, especially in the Midtown area. Am I correct, the Atlantans?
Yeah. They'll have like an intersection that's like Briarcliff, Terrace, Circle, and Street at like one intersection.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do this in Texas because there the driving is such a pleasure, really so easy, well laid out, sprawling big roads and all. First thing I did after coming here, struggling a little bit, is buy a GPS. Now I can't live here without a GPS. Till now I could manage elsewhere, but not in Atlanta. That's just my experience.
For your convenience, every road is named Peachtree.
Yeah. I guess going off that, so some of y'all mentioned like living close, living kind of right next to campus, and others 25 minutes away or so. Is there any necessity to be right next to campus? Like I don't know, like if you're on and off in classroom stuff, and obviously it benefits to be closer, or are classes more clumped, or can you clump them so commutes aren't bad? I don't know, I guess, is there any benefits to either that you've seen?
A few of us ride our bike on campus because now, especially the first semester, you're pretty much doing all your stuff over here. Mm-hmm. Like this is campus right here, you're looking at it.
Right.
But then as you're doing your electives and you're doing your business stuff, there's more to do over there. The buses work until 6 p.m. But I love riding my bike around here. I used to ride my bike all the way to campus on that 25-minute commute. And
be careful biking on the streets.
But I wouldn't say that there's any huge advantage to living right next to it, because being as far away as I am, it doesn't feel like a big deal getting places. In Istanbul, I hated going places because I had to take their public transit system, and it just wasn't a pleasure. Here, of course I drive now, but it's not a big deal.
I mean, most of the time the classes are pretty clumped together.
Yeah.
I mean, like our classes on Friday, there's an hour apart, so
right.
a lot of
so
times we just go out to lunch together or whatever.
I mean, it is nice that if you just want to like go home and drop off your stuff or something like that, you can, like you have that opportunity. And I know like me and Luca are pretty active into like going to the recreation center and all that, so I can just pop over there real quick and come back without having to like drive my car here and then run over there or whatever. So yes, there's going to be advantages. Are they distinct? No.
Yeah, I like being able to walk. It's nice. I don't know, traffic is awful in Atlanta between certain times, so I never really hit traffic because I can walk or drive around it. But yeah, it's pretty, if you live too far away, you just want to schedule your classes. I guess you really only have two options to schedule your classes, but for those two electives, to try to schedule them outside of traffic times, then it's not as bad.
Yeah, it really depends upon the time of day, because I'm actually still living at home because I'm from here in Atlanta. So my rent is the cheapest you can get. But it depends on the time of day. Like if we have 9 a.m. class, then it takes me like 35, 40 minutes to get here. But then other days I can get here in 20, 25 minutes. And then we have the study room upstairs, so I normally just come down basically for the day. And if I have like an hour and a half break between classes, I can just go up there and do work. So it's nice.
One thing I found, maybe you can all tell them, there are a lot of world markets in Atlanta. Farmers markets and world markets with produce from different countries. I don't know, that seems to be a big thing about Atlanta. At least it has hit us with something new which we didn't encounter in Texas and Dallas areas. But here there seems to be a very big, they're spread out in different locations. Do any of you know anything about them? For those who might be interested.
The reason for that is the like political refugees and all that. That people get accepted into the United States. There's a town called Clarkston, which is right outside of Georgia. That's where they send, like, they have places to set up for that. So we have tons of different, like, you know, people from all over the world: China, Indonesia, Asia, other South American countries, African countries. So there's a highway called Buford Highway. It's right up north of here, like 20 minutes. You can go up there, and yeah, there's the Buford Highway Farmers Market. I mean, I was talking to somebody last night, and like, I legitimately think that you can go in there and buy an entire cow in pieces if you wanted to. Like, you can do all that. They have all the crazy fruits from all across the world. You know, dragon fruit, that like really, really stinky fruit. I don't like it. Whatever, it's an Asian thing. But yeah, you can go in there and buy like tortas and all that. I mean, it's and you can go up to Buford Highway and you can go into a Chinese restaurant and it's like you're eating Chinese food in China. Like, the menu's not in English. Same thing goes for Mexican food. I mean, you can go there. I've gone to Mexico several times and eaten like in local villages. It's pretty much the same thing. There's more.
That's why I heard in the Buford area there are very good ethnic restaurants which are authentic.
Yeah, we didn't touch on that too much, but the culinary scene in Atlanta is huge. Like, we still haven't hit all the restaurants. I mean, not even close. Like, maybe a tenth of what we were originally talking about at the beginning of way back. So, and we probably once or two nights a week we'll go out to do something or something like that. So, yeah.
So I have a question for you guys. Who's in industry right now or is not coming out of undergrad straight? How many people? Okay, so there's a decent amount. All right, so Jonathan, who's not here, he's a clinician, he's a PT guy, and he's using this program to pivot into the medical device industry. So I don't know if you guys are looking at trying to pivot from certain industries and stuff, but that's definitely something this program offers. I mean, he's been in the clinical world for 8 years, and now he's switching over into this, and he's using this program to get into basically creating medical devices. So just want to let you guys know that it's not just for undergrad people, like the majority of us. You can also do that.
Are there opportunities to get a part-time job here? Or like, how's the career resources in Georgia Tech?
So I went to undergrad at Georgia Tech, so I'll probably field this question. Georgia Tech has an extremely good reputation in the country. Like, just the best thing to do is look at our upcoming career fair and look at the companies that are coming to it, or our past career fairs. And that'll give you an idea of the reputation that tech has. Locally, great reputation. I mean, you see, like, Coca-Cola's headquarters is right there. There's a reason why Coca-Cola's headquarters is right there. It's not a mistake.
Same thing for the other, like if you just look at the skyline right around tech, there's a reason why there's a cluster of these giant companies right next to an institute. Yes, there's opportunities to get part-time positions. Depends on what you want. I mean, if you want something that's related to medical devices, you probably can do that. I mean, we're building reputations with companies like CR Bard and all that. It just isn't going to be up to you reaching out to them. There's a medical device company that's like, what, 3 floors above us, CardioMEMS, that, you know, they're working on technologies that's possibly about to be acquired by St. Jude Medical. They're a pretty big company in medical devices, so you could definitely possibly walk upstairs and just work there, you know. So.
Yeah, and I've talked to them upstairs, and they didn't have anything right now, so it's kind of come and go, and just keeping up with them, checking in with different people around here, seeing what's available, and really determining if you feel like you have the time to do it, or how much time you feel like you have to put into it.
Yeah, I mean, like if you want to do something that's not related to medical devices, I mean, there's lots of on-campus jobs for students. I mean, working in the post office, working in the CRC or whatever. So you can pick them up.
How'd y'all get y'all's TA shifts? You and another, you and someone else had one. Like, did y'all just get through the department?
Yeah, so I had one last semester and this semester. And so last semester I set it up before I came here, and I think that's the best way to do it. And so I just reached out to Kristen and I guess Satya, I wasn't there yet, but you know, the people in charge, and just see, I'm interested in this, and then they put me in contact with the people that set up the TA positions, and one of the teachers had an opening, and so he messaged me, and that's kind of how it worked out. And then the next semester, they reached out to our class and said, we really want you guys to TA our senior design, because you know, this is a lot of overlap between them.
Yeah.
And so Brett and I are TAing senior design right now.
Gotcha.
And Christina is.
I TA the sophomore level design.
Okay.
So sophomore level students, pretty much the same thing. They're doing a medical device project, but that there's I think 4 other TAs in that class as well with me.
And for TAing, pretty much what we do is we have a lab section, and then you get the depends on which one. I have physiology and then now senior design, but you just instruct the lab and then grade reports for those. So it's quite a bit of work, but you get paid to do it. So.
Yeah, so she makes it sound like it's really laid back. Like it's been like,
it is a lot of work.
It's been like 10 hours grading reports
Yeah.
this weekend. Like,
Yeah.
It's pretty good, yeah.
But I don't know. I really like TA and senior design because it's like you're in charge of all these like 7 or 6 mini projects. So I mean, if you like what you're doing, then it's fun. It's just a lot to do for grading wise.
What forms of financial aid have y'all been able to find, since this wouldn't have the traditional research funding that other graduate programs would have?
I don't know. I mean, for me, I had to take out loans. I couldn't pay for any of it. I mean, it's pretty expensive, and I didn't have a job like coming in here because I came right out of undergrad. So I just took the loans out. I mean, they give you like housing money to live on campus, like if you're going to live on campus, which is more expensive than living off campus. So when you don't live on campus, they give that money back to you. And so like I used that to live off of in the fall, and then I was able to deny that this semester and probably in the summer because I have enough left over to probably get me through the next 2 semesters. I had a little bit of money coming in from a summer job I did, but that's how I kind of had it work, and I just know that I'll benefit from this program and be able to deal with loans once I get a job, and I'll still be young. But I mean, that's kind of the reality with a new program like this, is that they don't have they didn't even have like merit-based aid for us, I don't think, when we came. So I mean, it's a new program, so they're still building it up.
No, other than being new, there's also a professional master's program. Unlike the regular master's programs, which are research-based masters, this is a professional master's program. So think of it almost like an executive MBA, it's equivalent to something like that, this program, in terms of its, what you can call profile. So that's the reason why It's very career oriented. So it's almost like upfront you have to make the investment, but you also can expect something, tangible very shortly. I think that's underlying philosophy. I'm not giving any guarantees here or anything. Don't get me wrong, but that's the way that's how it's. These professional programs are just coming up around the country. Like yesterday, Dean May mentioned there are only 3 of them in Georgia Tech GT right now, professional programs. One in industrial systems or something like that. Was it industrial systems? One is this one.
Systems engineering.
Systems
Applied
engineering.
Systems engineering, yeah.
This and third one is coming up just so. This
Right.
is just quite recent.
What sort of jobs are you guys applying for? Are you guys applying right now? What sort of positions are you looking at?
Really depends. So, this program does a really good job at teaching you all the different types of jobs that are in medical devices. So coming into it, I knew quite a few just from internships or talking to people. But, we're applying, a lot of us are interested in product development roles. So, engineering 2 positions is what a lot of the titles are called. But depending on your background experience, it really just depends. You can go for clinical roles, regulatory roles, quality roles, marketing roles. It just really teaches you about all the different types of roles in medical devices.
So Jonathan's applying for reimbursement roles, basically reimbursement consulting. I'm looking at like project coordinator, project manager, but probably gonna have to end up doing like engineer 2 or 3 to get into that. But yeah, and mostly startups. I think majority of us are startups. And I know Emily's looking for larger sized.
Yeah, and I'm going larger size too.
But they do a really good job at having people come in that have worked in all these roles. So then you get to ask them questions like, oh, what is it? So we had some guy come in from sales. So we didn't know much about that. And so we asked him a lot about that. And it was cool to see a different component of medical devices.
Absolutely. And I mean, I would say the main thing is, I don't think really any of us are applying for entry-level positions. Like all of us are going for that like 2 to 3 to 4, maybe 5-year experience positions. And from most of the feedback we're getting, we're pretty much qualified for that. So. Yeah.
What are like the team design projects that you're working on?
That's a good question. I guess I'll go first. So our team is doing designing a set of ultrasound guided instruments to take open procedures or a little bit more invasive procedures and turning them into very minimally invasive so that you can move them out of the surgical space into like a ambulatory surgical center or even to inpatient. So cutting costs on both ends for recovery and for actually doing the procedure.
And I work with Jack and Emily, and we're working on a minimally invasive device for kidney stone removal. So, and we're working with, we're partnered with 2 clinicians, actually one of the urologists Santi was talking about, the MBA guy, at one of the local private practices here. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, so I'm working with Christine and Peter over there, and we're working on a diabetic ulcer monitor because currently they don't really exist. And so,
It's specifically for wearing underneath a total contact cast. Whenever the doctor doesn't have a direct line of sight to the wound, being able to monitor that kind of remotely.
Yeah.
Sorry, go.
I mean, and the goal of their project would be potentially to save people's feet. Like,
Reduce the rate of amputations and reduce the rate of complications of ulcers. Because whenever you complicate an ulcer, the price just skyrockets. It about triples, 4 times as much per annual cost.
And we've gotten some mentorship so far. A teacher in the industrial design department, he pretty much helped us form the project idea and really helped us identify some people we can really shadow and ask some questions to, physical therapy people and stuff like that. So
that's a good point. How many of you currently have an idea for a device that you'd like to see turned into a medical device? 1, 2, 3. All right, so how many of you are worried about coming up with an idea for a medical device to turn into it? All right, yeah, so that's a good part of the program is that we interface a lot with the clinical people that really want these devices. And these people already have ideas for what they want. And so if you have your own idea, that's great. You can start your own company if you want to and be CEO. But if you don't really need to worry about it, because part of the program is actually learning to interface with the clinical side. So it's not hard to find ideas. The only difficult part is deciding which one to go with based on, market analysis and the other things of that nature, which you're also instructed on how to analyze.
Yeah. Also tagging on to that, one of the also things you learn is just because a physician might know what they want doesn't mean that's what they need. So being able to identify, it's like this physician comes and goes, I want this device, I want it to do X, I think it's going to be fantastic. You're like, that's great. That doesn't actually solve your problem. And you're trying to take that need and identify the actual base need that you're trying to meet, and then design from there. So it is a two-step process. There's a lot of ideas out there, but you're also trained as a filter for them.
Yeah, and really, even into addition to that, you also learn to kill your own projects, which is what my team did last semester. We got halfway through this semester and went, nah, it's not good. Killed it and started over. So,
in fact, learning to kill projects at the right time is a very important arsenal and day-to-day reality of medical device career. Probably you'll kill far more projects than you'll carry them. And at one time I got labeled, in my marketing guy called me as the biggest killer of projects from R&D, my group. Because I told them it's not going anywhere. If you see early enough, don't point 20 crore resources. And I was very vocal about it. So he kind of jokingly used to say, you kill more projects than anybody I know of. But I think many of us had that experience. And it's a very good point that you're making, Brett, that don't be afraid to be perfectly honest to yourselves as your team and individually. Look yourself in the mirror and say, this is not going to make it, and don't just push it beyond the limit. Kill it at the right time.
yeah. I would advise, if you're going to kill your project, you should probably inform your professor before you go into the next presentation. Present something.
I didn't want to bring that up, but okay. Self-confessions are always welcome. They show me the integrity of my class. I admire them for that. Yes, but I'm not going to incriminate them in front of everyone.
But with that, I will say that brings up the point that we killed it internally. It was a purely decision of our team. It was the right decision to make, but it did not take a professor or an advisor or somebody going in and saying, this isn't a good project. As a matter of fact, most of what we were getting told from clinicians was, this is a great idea. It's like green light, green light, green light, green light, and then our team the whole time was like yellow light, red light. Kind of deal. So yeah. Any more questions?
Well, and a little more about just developing needs and trying to come up with these ideas. So my team, we actually had the opportunity to go to a nephrology conference. I always say concert, but there was no reason. It was just people there. But a nephrology conference. So that's one good thing about being in Atlanta, is a lot of things do come to you. And so we got to go to this conference and talk to different urologists, because that's what we wanted to do our project on. And we connected with a urologist at UAB, and just to help us get ideas for our project, and just really had the opportunity to network within Atlanta. So I got to go visit him when I went to Birmingham, and so just constantly being in the atmosphere of clinicians that are excited about ideas, and you get to hear a lot of them, and then you guys get to decide which direction you want to go.
So what we're trying to say is, this is like the real deal. It's not like an academic exercise, like senior project for undergrad. Like, you're actually trying to make a real medical device. You treat it as like you're a startup company and you're going through the process of ideation to commercialization. I think that's like the home run of this program. Yeah.
Well, it looks better on a resume than just a normal project that doesn't consider anything other than the technical aspects.
Exactly. So it has nothing to do with undergrad senior design.
Yeah. Because that was one of my concerns too, coming here. I'm like, I don't want to do senior design again and just do, another type of senior design. I want something different. And I definitely feel like it was different.
So think of it as an experience where you can afford to fail and without paying too much of a cost price in your life. In the real world, if you fail and the project gets closed, very often you may lose your job. The company may shut down that particular product line or whatever, and you may have to relocate or whatever. Here is that it's not that the consequence is not that drastic, but in a well-meaning way, you can mistakes are fine because everybody is going to make mistakes all through their careers. So don't be afraid of mistakes. Don't be risk averse. But at the same time, have passion and put in the best to bring an outcome. This is an opportunity for that to go through the exercise. I'm glad you brought up that point, Luca. It's a very important differentiator that, because I didn't have an undergrad degree in BME. There's no BME departments, as I told you when I was studying. So fortunately, I didn't come with a conditioned mind that undergrad experience has to be like this. I was loose. And so what I mean to say is that I didn't have the structure at all in my mind. So there's no attempt on my part here to model the curriculum on an undergraduate and make an extension of that. And fortunately, I think that seems to help because my entire focus is on making practice-based and real-world. Those are the two pillars of the program. That's all.
Also, to go along with Luca, the program itself is like really kind of like you get out of it what you put into it. So no one's gonna like hold your hand. Like you have to go out and make the contacts. Like you have all of the ability, you have the network and the sources here, but you have to go out and look for that thing. Like we found the nephrology conference and then talked to Satya about it, and they helped us get into it and go. But you have to be proactive about who you contact and who you network with and stuff like that. And you get the tools, but you have to use them. You can't just sit back and wait for people to just give you.
They heard Rob Michael's video clip, whom you all heard, the entrepreneur. Network, focus, adapt. He kept saying all that. I played that 2-minute segment for them. But that's the same thing applies here. You're all entrepreneurs, just like him. So this program teaches that self-initiative and all the things that you got to do on your own.
Yeah, so are you guys planning on taking your products or devices actually to market, or is this more like a learning experience?
It would be fantastic.
Yeah.
There's certain aspects that are set up through, especially through Georgia Tech, to kind of be able to find angel investors, to be able to kind of take it forward if you feel you want to do that. Ideally, at the end of the summer, we should be in a position that wouldn't be infeasible to do. We're going to have, kind of have considered 510K or PMA, whatever it is. We're going to, consider the regulation. We're going to have considered the clinical. We're going to have to consider the market. So it's not infeasible. It's not necessarily required, nor is it necessarily kind of expected. But if it's something you're very passionate about, if it's something that has a lot of promise and is something that that has worked out, honestly, because sometimes it just doesn't work out. But if it does, there's resources and there are people that you can talk to think about the possibility of moving that forward.
So we're doing everything along the lines to make that a possibility. So we're on basically
on track too, but
like you said, we gotta kill projects, decide what's going on. We have a year to do it, and normally a startup company has 2 years and a couple $1 million of funding, right? So
So where do you get your money for funding prototype development stuff before you can go present it to some angel investor or something like that?
So some money comes from within the program. A lot of that we're working out now. So by the time y'all get through it, it'll hopefully be a very smooth system for it.
Okay.
But yeah, so the first semester you're not really doing any prototyping. So now we're getting into doing the hardcore prototyping now. So I don't have a good clean answer for you. That would be a better answer. You might get it.
Yeah, I mean the program has a budget for materials and supplies, and some amount of it, like Brett said, will come out of the program budget itself. And we'll have to wait and monitor and see if it's something more sophisticated and advanced. We may get some sponsorship from local area, funding sources. There are some clinicians and others who are willing to sponsor for some good causes. We can do that. But I think our program budget itself will pretty much cover quite a bit of these types of expenses.
And our team is also applying for grants. For a pediatric application of our project. So if we get that, then that will cover far more than what we need.
And of course, if there are some industry-sponsored projects, the industry will support a lot. But we are assuming that these are not supported at all by the industry. These are the pathways we are talking about, right?
Are any of y'all's projects sponsored by the industry or any industries?
We're all independent. There's possibilities.
There's a possibility. And some clinicians have come and made proposals, and they're willing to sponsor and fund part of the project if the students wanted to choose them. But based on their choice, they have chosen other projects. But there's always a possibility that if you choose a project offered by a clinician, then the clinicians are willing to fund the cost items related to supplies and prototyping and all.
I know you guys are coming back from a lot of different backgrounds and have different places you want to go. I know we'll be available during the lunch and everything, but right now you can ask us questions where it'll hit all of us at the same time, where one of our backgrounds might actually meet yours and we can better answer that question. So if you have something where you're like, I'm kind of wondering, this is probably a good time to ask.
Well, it kind of feels like next step from here. Excuse me. I mean, after you finish this program, what's like your next step, like directly into industry? Is there any more like academic goals that you want to reach, or anything
I
like
think
that?
most of us are trying to go into industry.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is a really good transition from, to industry. So the medical device industry specifically. So I think that's.
And it does train you to hit the ground running, as it were. Ideally, we'd like to, get some maybe a little bit higher than entry level positions. Some is eventually moving into management within the next 5-10 years. It definitely, we're hoping that especially that it will shorten training period times. So whereas you might train for 6 months if you were an undergrad, we might train for 2. Or again, but that really depends on the company. It really depends on the position. But it's kind of training you to get into the market as quickly as possible. It's a year-long program, and most of us, that is our goal.
Pat, how far are we from lunch in terms of, is it coming?
Parking lot, they're bringing it in now.
Bring it here?
We're gonna set up out here at this, condenser area out here. Yeah, so everybody can still sit and talk and mingle in here.
Yeah, you can all discuss through lunch too. And following lunch, 1 o'clock, Brett, you're giving the tour. Anybody else involved in the student group, or you want me to do it? I'll be with you too if you want.
I mean, I'm fine with giving the tour.
Pardon?
I'm fine with giving the tour.
Okay, good.
Are we gonna eat in the lab or
Are we gonna
more
eat
table space?
For the lunch?
We bring it out.
Yeah, it's the same if I have more space up there.
There's always big table.
It'll be a little bit crowded, but I think I'll clear up my stuff here and we can.
Go and take all those spots, right?